You're good.
Last Saturday at City Hall.
Today I looked outside at a nation I call mine. It's given me a good life, it's treated me just fine. And though I'm living happily, I feel a sense of shame, knowing that so many could never say the same. I'm just another person, there's no power I can claim. How could I make a difference? How could I make a change? But now we have an answer, a man to lead the way. He's here to save our home, and Bernie is his name. That's why I feel the burn. That's why I feel the burn. Oh, that's why I feel the burn. Ooh, that's why I feel the burn. We say we're an example of how the world should be, but we still have kings and castles and peasants at their feet. And now we're just a country always hungering for more, with the rich still getting richer and the rest becoming poor. So Bernie came to tell us that our system is corrupt. He'll stand up to the big banks, he's gonna break them up, but he can't do it alone, and that's where we come in. So let's stand with Bernie Sanders, cause the world needs him to win. That's why I feel the burn. That's why I feel the burn. Oh, that's why I feel the burn. That's why I feel the burn. We drown ourselves in issues, too many to discuss, but there's one we can't ignore, cause it won't wait for us. To put it plain and simple, our earth is very sick. Climate change is real, there's no denying it. So many politicians are hiding from the facts, and Bernie is the only one who knows we have to act. Cause unlike all the others, he's not putting himself first. He wants to leave our children with a healthy planet Earth. That's why I feel the burn. That's why I feel the burn. Oh, that's why I feel the burn. That's why I feel the burn. That's why I feel the burn.
Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Project Sanity. I'm your host, Richard Green, and I'm here with co-host Nis Pedersen, and just want to welcome you all to another episode of Project Sanity. Just to give you an idea of what today's show is going to be about, we're going to be taking a special look into California politics, taking a look at the Break Free event in California and as well as nationwide. We have some special interviews from a citizen journalist, Dave Coennen, who will be joining us later in the show. And in our ending segment, we're going to be taking a look at journalism and digging into it a bit more, figuring out what its history in the United States looked like, and what are some significant events that we often have reference to, but don't necessarily put in the context, or put in all the context that we could. And so we're going to be doing that. First, I just want to say hello and get Nis in here and welcome you all, and definitely cover anything I already missed, I'm sure. So here we go. Here's Nis.
Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you for putting together this show. And I gotta say, it's been interesting. I'm in Ipswich, outside a small town outside Boston in Massachusetts, and it's been a challenge to set up Wi-Fi and do research while away from home, but I'm learning on the go, and I think we're going to have a kick-ass show for everyone today.
Yeah, I had some issues on my side with my monitor springing to life right before the show, so that messed up a lot of our settings with the software we're using. So I apologize if anything seems weirdly out of skew. It's something I missed in the 30 minutes that I was prepping both to come live and to make sure everything fit right. So Nis, I won't interrupt anymore. You go ahead and give us some headlines.
Okay, so today in the news, we are going to touch on both international and domestic news. And I'm going to start with legislation that's been passed and some that's trying to be passed. So to start off with good news, the Illinois Senate approves a bill for automatic voter registration. This was brought by the Chicago Tribune earlier today. And it is a good first step with regards to avoiding any, shall we call it, shenanigans vis-a-vis actually getting the permission to vote. If my screen shakes, by the way, it's because I have this plastic makeshift table that my computer's on. It was the best I could do on short notice. So I'll try not to move around too much, which is hard when you have to steer a mouse. So it's a good first step towards avoiding the, well, let's call it what it is, the disenfranchisement of voters, which has up until this go-round primarily been targeted at people of color, blacks, Hispanics, the voting groups that goes against the interest of those who seeks to keep their seats. So while it's by no means enough, it's by no means the end of the struggle, because as many people can talk about from back in 2000 election in Florida, even though you were registered to vote for the general election, you all of a sudden was removed from the rolls because the state claimed that you had priors, that you were a former felon, and thus you could not vote. And then when you cleared up the mistake after the election, it of course was a happenstance and a mistake, and it won't happen again, and we're terribly sorry. And then 4 years later, it happened again. So it's a good first step. Now let's take the next. In other news, in Oklahoma, the legislature has passed a bill making it a felony to perform abortions, punishable by prison with between 1 and 3 years in a state penitentiary, to be associated with an abortion, to perform it, to aid in it. And I know how people have talked about, oh, the Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot up by holding up the nomination of a Supreme Court justice. But how are you going to bring this to the Supreme Court and actually get a ruling? This will actually be the law of Oklahoma until the Supreme Court is reconstituted so that it can have a majority vote. Yeah, so that is very bad news for the people in Oklahoma. And yet another measure to take away already established rights of people. To bring it around to the election, the U.S. House of Representatives have voted to restrict Confederate flags in national cemeteries. This law prohibits VA cemeteries and national cemeteries to have big flags, Confederate flags, flying over the cemetery, and it prohibits big flags flying over mass graves, but it does not restrict or prohibit the small Confederate flags that you sometimes see in front of the individual tombstones. The interesting thing here is that Paul Ryan is speaking about this straight up and down vote in which quite a few Republicans broke ranks and voted with the Democrats for this bill. He is talking about this as an example of you have to allow these kinds of votes, and that these are amongst the highest standards and traditions of the U.S. government. And well, while he is to some extent right, I also see this as quite the political move for Speaker Ryan to try and whitewash the Republicans for the general election. So while I'm glad that there's an up and down vote on this subject, let's see if we can then get an up and down vote on gay rights, civil rights, environmental laws, education. Let's see if how politically courageous he is in regards to this. Now, speaking of enacting legislation, HB 2 in North Carolina continues its long and disgraceful saga. While there has been outcry from business and from entertainers, the Republicans, especially the governor of the state of North Carolina, are proving to be obstinate in their support of this bill. And they are going so far as to smear the otherwise very internationally celebrated violinist Itzhak Perlman, who has canceled his North Carolina concert in protest to the HB 2 transgender law. The governor called it hypocritical since he has not canceled his trip to Texas and Wisconsin, which, according to him, has strict bathroom laws. But according to our researchers, Texas and Wisconsin do have bathroom laws on the docket, but nothing has been passed yet. And there are already movements and efforts underway in both those states to try and stop those laws from being passed. On the other side of the HB 2 argument, one of the staunch defenders of gay, lesbian, and transgender rights and opponents of the bill, Chris Skro, who is a representative and also an activist of sorts on the issue, has quoted a study saying that the HB 2 law, has already cost North Carolina $500 million in business income. And PolitiFact, who are usually quite good about this, states that this is straight false, that even the study he's quoting does not agree with him. The study says that potentially North Carolina can lose $500 million in business economy, but is nowhere near that number at the moment. That is not to say that they are not losing heavily in businesses. There are already movie productions from, among others, Hulu, that has moved out of town, and PayPal, who was about to start a business there with over 400 jobs, has pulled out completely and thus effectively cost 400 jobs from North Carolina. So then you could say, what is actually going on behind the scenes here? Well, in the New and Observer, they have gotten hold of emails from not just HB 2, but from last year, when there was a law on the docket concerning religious rights, in which Disney sent a mail to the legislature, the the speaker and the governor, saying that they would pull their business from the state if this law was enacted, and they did not enact the law. Now, when PayPal announced the plans, they announced concerns over HB2. They tried to say that, oh, but the law allows businesses to do whatever they want with their toilets. And they asked their staff to point this out to PayPal, and a couple of days later, PayPal pulled out of North Carolina altogether. And to me, as a albeit new resident in North Carolina, this is very sad, because North Carolina is actually one of the fastest growing, one of the states with the fastest growing economy in the United States. Among many reasons for this is the tech industry surrounding Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. And this very large growth that they have in this industry can actually be stunted by this, especially considering that their tourist industry, according to some reports at least, and statements from towns that rely heavily on tourism, they are reporting that they are already feeling it. They are feeling cancellations from people who are simply straight up canceling their trips to the state. On a personal note, as a parent who has two daughters, there is a blog on a website called Patheos.com where a parent talks about an experience about how the climate has changed, about how she accompanies her son to the men's room because he's still potty training, and how that didn't used to be a problem. But after the HB2 controversy and the commercials and this state of hysteria that this person is claiming she is experiencing, she even found herself in the ladies' room seeing a man out there taking care of his daughter. And usually she would not have given it a second thought. But because of this heightened state of things, she was extremely paranoid about why he was there, even though he was taking care of his daughter, who was potty training. It actually took her a while to empathize with the situation, to add the nuances of different motivations for this person to be there, to relax about it and take the shortest route, that the man had probably sent his daughter into the bathroom, waited outside, and then she called. And then he came in to help her because she needed help.
Seems sensible.
She's describing that she's in a state where she no longer feels comfortable going out to help her son, who cannot yet, as of yet, use an adult toilet on his own. She does not feel comfortable going out to help him because she's afraid that it will be reported to the police and that she will actually be in violation of the law, even though she's out there to help her son.
You know, that I think I discussed with you before, and it reminds me of an irony, and I'm going to run over in news already that more than I planned, but we'll be all right, is that part of that is addressing that we used to have a thing called breaching. What breaching meant was, up until a certain age, boys wore dresses because of the complications around the complicated fastening of early pants and jeans and stuff like that. And so it would take time for a kid to learn how to do that, and as a practical course, people just put them in basically like nightgown-ish type attire, so that and it also had lots of issues of people wearing them, some people wearing them long into adulthood for other reasons of not wanting to take on some of the other responsibilities that came along with being breached or by wearing pants or whatever. And so it just shows how, and that was not that long ago. It was, I want to say President Roosevelt was, Roosevelt, Teddy, there's a picture of him out there in a dress as a young child. And it's how we can change so dramatically to where, you know, we're going to write a law that's going to make it very awkward and complicated for a woman like that to deal with a situation like that for her son. when just not even 100 years ago it was not uncommon to resolve that by putting a boy in a dress. Now that would seem like a totally absurd solution because of all of the other social dynamics at play. It really speaks to how a few generations can change dramatically our perception of how to resolve a problem. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but go ahead. Finish up.
No, it's okay. But it has happened in several things. So, for example, I used to smoke quite a lot. I stopped about 6 months ago. And before I stopped, I identified heavily as a smoker. And I felt how through from the 90s in Denmark alone, the paradigm surrounding smoking and what was acceptable just changed. And it stopped. It wasn't because I was afraid of cops or restaurant owner or anything like that I stopped myself from smoking a cigarette out on the street, even not near anyone. It was because I didn't want the looks from other people. It had become so socially condemned that I was policing myself. And even in spite of the discomfort I felt with it in Denmark, when my fiance came to visit Denmark, she didn't even realize how accustomed she'd come to not see smoking anywhere. And she just saw, I think through the week and a half she was there, she saw a handful of people on the street throughout the week and a half smoking a cigarette. And it really hit her, like, that's not okay. And things change for various reasons. Now, we can have all the discussions we want about smoking and whether or not people should be free or not free to do that or not. But the concept of this woman, I mean, yeah, of course she thinks about, oh my God, I could get arrested. But it's the uncomfortableness of being suspect by the other people in the restaurant looking at her. Why are you coming out from the men's room?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Is that really a boy, or is that a girl in boys' clothes? Like, I mean, it's the self-policing that the ostracization, the that something becomes so vitriolic that you fear stepping even slightly out of bounds. Yeah. Okay. So
absolutely,
yeah. So moving on. Again, when speaking about out of bounds, the last couple of days has had some news concerning gun violence. So in New York, there was a man who tried to buy beer in the Food Emporium on West 49th Street and 8th Avenue around 8:30 a.m. And he was swearing at the people in the store, and he, according to the police report, became belligerent and threatening, and he had a very, very small folding knife in his hand. So he was shot and killed by the police, and to such a dramatic effect that ricochets actually wounded a woman bystander and an officer. I don't know who this man was or what his state of mind was, but he should not be dead.
Yeah, there's a long list of I guess there's also studies that show that police generally miss about 60%, or anywhere from 40 to 60% of their shots, sometimes more. So ricochets or just misplaced fire, not taking into consideration the backdrop, all these types of things are dangerous, and we've been allowing the police to get away with far too much. And that is, in these examples of the most extreme, and where we have well-documented incidences where there's either multiple witnesses and or video cameras, seems to be the only thing that's enough to even start the conversation. But as many people have shown, we're still arguing about whether, if a cop gets in a car accident that appears to be his fault, whether he should be subject to a sobriety test or not, like whether he should be drug tested. That's not something the union should be fighting to protect police from, is the very common course that we would go off for any other individual that was involved in the types of incidents that we're talking about, let alone if they're killing people and under questionable circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And especially when you consider how grand juries work. There is a YouTube video by a black woman who was she was a prosecutor for New York State. And it was about, I want to say around January or February, when there was yet another shooting. And no, there wasn't a shooting. There was an acquittal of police officers that were guilty as sin, caught on videotape. And the prosecutor said, oh, I couldn't get the grand jury to indict. I did all I could. And this woman, she went off on a righteous rant like I have rarely heard about how grand jury indictments work, and that the prosecutor can basically get any indictment he wants just using toilet paper and sass. I mean,
yeah, no, I think you have that's a great point, and I'd like to go into it even more. We have a show planned. We're already eating into it. I have a lot of great stuff I want to show.
Moving on, I would just like to say to people, if Sean Kin earlier this week put out an article reminding us of past shootings this year and last year of mentally ill people, and correlated that with videos of British and German police, how they have handled belligerent people, armed people with melee weapons, and how they handled it by using physical force, not deadly force, not even having their guns out. So I want to give a shout out to Sean King for bringing this back up, and even the providence of it being so timely with yet another shooting coming a couple of days later.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're too frequent, and the timing a little too easy to hit, I think. And there's a large point to be made about how other police forces resolve these things, and oftentimes the most common excuse I've heard from the police side is, well, they could be armed with a gun, this, that, and the other thing. But oftentimes what we're talking about is a specific incident like this, where we know what they're armed with, what they viewed as the threat, what they are saying they viewed, and the inconsistencies between what their first take of the story is, and then when either more evidence arises or people point out that doesn't actually make any sense, that the changes in stories is one of the big things I think that doesn't get enough attention. I mentioned it in the Walter Scott case, or in the skate case down in North Carolina, where he was actually charged with obstructing justice, basically on the idea that he had falsified his police reports, which does not happen often enough in times where that is one of the few things that we can blatantly prove. And so what we end up getting is an acquittal, or them not being found not guilty of a murder, but that other underlying thing goes unwatched or unchecked, and that's very unfortunate. And so with moving on to what we can do about it, about these types of injustices that we see in our communities, one of the things that we need to do is get engaged, get involved, get registered, and vote. And Dave, who I mentioned earlier, and has been interacting in chat a little bit as Feel the Burn TV.
I would like.
Go ahead.
I would like to say, not just vote. Vote is a thing you do every 4 years for the federal and every 2 years for a city. Vote is not enough. Get together as a community. Talk about what you need done. Find the most charismatic and intelligent person in that community. Have that person go up and say, hello, I represent 10,000 voters. And we're not going to take this anymore. So now you and I, we're going to negotiate. Make your own lobbyist group. Empower someone in your community to become a power broker on your behalf. A person that lives where you live, a person that you can hold accountable, a person that will not take any decision or reach any agreement without having first sold it or presented it to you, a person who will be your honest arbiter with the politicians or even the bureaucrats who are in there. So to round off the news segment, check out Sean King, who also has an article up on Simone Marshall, who unfortunately, because of our time constraints, I won't have enough time to go into detail about. She was injured in a car accident. Instead of being driven to the hospital, she was put into city jail where she died. She pleaded for help, and she was on her phone with her sister, and her sister called the jail and asked for help, and they refused giving her medical attention, and she died for no reason. This happened in Texas. So, yeah. I just want to quickly round it off with some good news. In Germany, some good international news for once. In Germany, earlier this week, last Sunday on May 8th, they had so much sun and wind energy that for a brief moment, they had 87% of their country's total energy coming from solar and wind, and they generated so much energy that the energy company had to actually pay, not a lot, we're talking cents, it would only get deducted, but they actually, in principle, had to pay the citizens, the users of the energy, because they paid so much, they generated so much, they sold it outside their country, as most European countries do. And yeah, so that is actually some good news on at least the environmental front. And another good piece of good news internationally is that Google is appealing a French court order to send that they are ordering Google to censor right to be forgotten links on a global scale. And they are actively fighting that. If you've heard about net neutrality, that's one thing. Right to be forgotten is a movement who says if you make a mistake on the internet when you're young and dumb or just by accident, you pay for it the rest of your life because links don't die. And Google is actually thinking that, well, that's not a bad thing to be able to, that people get to forget that things happen after some time. Not that there won't be a permanent record of it, but just that it won't keep popping up in suggestions. And for some reason, France is fighting this. So if you think it's a good idea, if you've ever done anything stupid in your life and it's out there on a video, go check out this case and help see if you can do anything to help Google set a precedent for this to not become a precedent.